Gun Owners Radio. We make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for listening to Gun Owners Radio. Don't forget to check out our website. Go to GO Radio. Actually, it's gunownersradio.com. Follow us on social media if you're not already. And if you are following us on social media, or after you start following us on social media, share with your friends. Make sure that they all know that you listen to Gun Owners Radio, and they should too. Sign up for our email and tell your friends. Make sure that they all know about Gun Owners Radio. I don't want to be the best kept secret in Second Amendment. So go to gunownersradio.com, follow us, and thanks for listening.
Gun Owners Radio has a new home here at Discount Gun Mart. DGM has given us a bunker that we call a studio for Gun Owners Radio. So check out DGM in San Diego on Marina and in Santee by Gillespie Field off the 67. And if you have internet access, go to the interwebs and look up discountgunmart.com for more info.
A bunker. I like it.
A bunker. I like it. Very catchy.
A not so secure bunker.
Like a Faraday cage.
They've been so wonderful to us, so great. Hey, welcome everybody who went to SHOT Show. I hope, I figure you're about 24 to 48 hours from coming down from some major sickness like they always do at SHOT Show.
Seems to go, yeah.
The SHOT Show Petri dish.
That's it.
So I didn't go. I've never been to SHOT Show. Have you ever been one time?
I see every year. You know what? Next year's going to be the year.
Yeah.
I haven't made it yet, but next year's the year.
I've never ever next year's the year. Never gone. Although the SAF Second Amendment Foundation just announced that Salt Lake City in September is gun policy. Gun rights policy convention.
Yes.
Gun rights policy convention.
I always want to throw a coalition on there, but you're right.
Yeah.
Convention. Correct.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to that. And I was talking about that last week, and I figured it out that GRCP is really the activist convention, where SHOT is the check out these cool toys convention.
Right.
It's not even a convention. It's a show, right? It's more of a industry thing. I'm not really, it sounds horrible. I mean, it's Gun Owners Radio. I run a Second Amendment organization. Not a big gun wonk, I don't really, I don't know every stat of every make and model that comes out from, and Kimber and Colt and Taurus isn't really, but I'm not that guy.
Not in all the gadgets and gizmos and the newest.
No.
Newest thing.
Yeah, I find one thing, and that's my thing, and it works.
It's called a Glock.
And it's called a Glock. It's not complicated, and I'm not a complicated guy.
There you go.
So my next, you know what my next gun is? Did I tell you this?
No.
My next gun is going to be, I happily gave up my shotgun it was actually my dad's shotgun that he's had since the 60s, and I happily turned that over to my nephew because I wanted him to have it. And but now I need a shotgun for trap and skeet and sporting clays. Sporting clays, really.
When was the last time you shot sporting clays?
It's been a long time. It's been like a year.
Okay.
Maybe even longer. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to get? This is a pump action. It was a Winchester 1200 pump action with a big old 30-inch barrel, no full choke. We had a full choke.
Yeah.
And it was a total goose gun, but I loved it. And I think my next is going to be a double barrel side by side.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm going to be shooting with the train tracks.
That's it.
So I want to be so I'm not fancy, and I want a double barrel side by side with one trigger. I don't want this two trigger business. That'll just confuse everybody. Anyway, I don't know how we got off on that. How we get off on that?
I don't know, but you know what I think it's time for?
What's it time for?
Gun Truth of the Week.
Gun Truth of the Week.
Gun Truth of the Week.
Okay, we've been talking about a study. We've pulled a couple of facts from a study by a couple of researchers, James Wright and Peter Rossi. This week is also from them. Researchers James Wright and Peter Rossi report that 57% of the felons they surveyed agreed that felons are more worried about being shot by an armed victim than by a cop. So the question you need to ask yourself, your friends, and your loved ones is, do you want to be feared by 50% or 57% of criminals? If so, buy a gun, get trained, get a carry permit, and carry everywhere you can. And that is your gun truth of the week. That's a good one.
It's good.
I like that we got a real live timpani in here too. Sounds good. Okay.
The
Time
little guy sitting in the corner of the drum.
Yeah, that's Rich. Rich, you need to learn how to, there you go. Learn how to play a timpani. Okay, Q&A. You have Q's, I have A's. I get all kinds of questions throughout the week. And I decided to start answering them on the air. I try to answer them, as soon as I can too. So if you have questions, email, text, whatever, get a hold. Happy to answer. Half the time I'm even right. So that's an added bonus you get. That's not 57% of felons who are afraid of being shot by, it's 50%. It's close. Okay, so here are the questions. Do I have to have all the guns I want to carry when I am completing my CCW application? Okay, this comes up a lot, and I can only answer for San Diego. I don't know exactly how it works in Orange. I don't know exactly how it works in Riverside. I don't know exactly how it works in San Bernardino. And I definitely don't know how it works in any other part of the state. But in San Diego, and I think this is true actually for the other three counties that I mentioned, you actually don't. When you fill out the application on CCW Pro, is it CCW Pro or Pro CCW?
CCW Pro.
CCW Pro is their new online program. When you fill it out, you actually don't have to fill out, you don't have to put any guns.
I believe the field requires you to put something, but you can put NA. You don't have to list.
Yeah. You don't have to actually list any guns. When the only time you have to make sure that you list all of your guns is when you go through the class, you take your class after your approval, it's now a 16-hour class. You have to have all your guns, bring them to the class, unloaded, locked in a case. Make sure you bring the ammo or whatever the instructor. What do you guys? How much ammo per gun?
The sheriff if it's your initial permit, they require you to bring 100 rounds for your primary gun, 50 rounds for each additional gun. But most people bring home ammo.
There you go.
Yeah, your actual qual is 15 rounds, but even then beyond that, they do require that once you pass with those 15 per gun, that you spend a certain number of rounds downrange. So if you do well, you still have to do more than that.
So you're going to be putting ammo through every single gun you put on your CCW.
Correct.
And they're gonna make you list the make, model, and caliber. So
That's it.
There you go. So again, you can actually go through the application process without actually listing any guns. Might as well list one, but you actually don't have to list any guns, and it's not important until you actually take the class.
Yep.
Okay. I thought this was interesting. What's the appointment with licensing for? So when you go fill out the application, you pick a date to go do your initial, and basically, and this is true. I believe this is true. This is true throughout. Really, the appointment is to get your fingerprints done. It's to get your picture taken. And they really just kind of make sure, hey, we think, it looks like we have everything we need to make a decision.
Because it's been 9 to 12 months since you made the appointment and did the application.
Well,
is the information still correct?
Not anymore, but yes,
shorter.
It'll be 6-7 months or so.
Right. So you want to make sure the info is still current.
So they don't actually do anything. When you fill out that application, you just fill out the application. They don't actually start doing your background and that sort of thing until you actually go to this first appointment. So the first appointment's really they take your picture, take your fingerprints, they look over your application, they make sure they have everything you need. If they don't, they say, hey, we need this, and you supply it. And that's really when the clock starts. You should have, if everything goes smoothly, you should have your CCW you should have an approval within 90 days of that meeting. Okay. Wait, anyway, add anything? Should I add anything? Anything I missed or anything you want to emphasize?
No, you're correct.
Okay.
But the one thing I'd like to add, though.
See, I knew it.
There should be something.
I knew there was.
That's it.
I knew there was going to be something.
So,
is there anything you want to add? No, you covered it. Well, I could add something. All right, go ahead.
Just by way of why should I put my guns on my application?
Mm-hmm.
In case people are curious, like, well, why do they bother asking if it's not required or needed at that point?
Right.
What it can be is it's an opportunity for them to kind of pre-screen your firearms. That is an opportunity for them to, as part of their background check in that process, they can look over your application, make sure that your registration on the firearms that you're listing is current and correct. Because I will tell you, there's a lot of people that will list guns. Maybe it's a gun they got from, they got from their dad and inherited. They didn't bother to go through CFARs. it's not registered to them. So it's an opportunity to catch issues.
Or DOJ just screws up.
Right.
Like
Correct.
I had a firearm and DOJ, I put it on my permit and then I went for the renewal and DOJ is like, nah, we don't know anything about this gun all of a sudden. And I'm like, wait a minute, you did 2 years ago.
Right.
Like, so yes, that is
Yeah.
a very good point. If you put it on the application, after your first appointment, they will start looking into, hey, is this gun actually licensed to them and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that way it gives you time to fix it. Because if you don't list it, they don't look at it and they don't vet it until after you submit your certificate.
Yeah.
And then it can be difficult.
It
takes more time.
It'll take more
delays.
time. It'll
Yep.
delay it. It's not like they're going to say, nope, you're done. They'll
Right.
just say, hey, now we need more info. And, it's going to delay your CCW by days or weeks. Okay, somebody wrote this in. Actually, a couple people sent some kind of version of this, and I've talked about this a lot. This, of course, is a political show. It's Second Amendment, but it's political. You said, meaning me, I said, there were almost as many votes for president in 2024 as in 2020. But I am seeing a difference of many millions. Can you explain, please? Okay, so basically what people are seeing is they're seeing this graph that came out. It's a bar graph that came out like right after the election, November 6th, November 7th, something like that. There it is up on your screen. And it looks like on that graph, it's like, well, wait a minute. Why were there so many more? It's like 12 million more votes in 2020 than in 2024. So what happened? Obviously, there was some kind of fraud. 12 million people. That's impossible. Then 2020 or 2016 and 2012, they had about the same amount. And then all of a sudden in 2020, there was this huge spike in votes. And then there wasn't, it leveled off in 2024. Okay, so what you're seeing is in that graph that came out right after the election. So like I said, early November 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in that area. They're only showing in 2024 the number of votes that had been counted at that time. So there were 8-9 million votes that had not yet been counted, the majority of which were in California. California takes a long time to count. But even states like Texas, New York, etc., these big, huge states, takes them a long time. So when you see that graph, you're seeing like, hey, there was this big spike in 2020, and then it went back to normal in 2024. No, here's what actually happened. Show the next graph. I took the liberty of creating another graph here. In 2020, there were 155.5 million votes. That was the popular vote. Okay, 155.5 million. 81 million were for Biden, 74 million were for Trump. In 2024, after all the votes were counted, there was 152 million. So it was only about a 3 million vote difference. And on that graph, on the far left, you're seeing how many votes. The dark blue bar is Biden, and that's his 81 million votes. The red bar is Trump in 2020, and that's his 74 million votes. The light blue graph is Harris in 2024, when she got 75 million votes. And then the gold graph the gold bar is Trump in 2024, and he got 77 million votes. So I just made that little graph. That's actually what it looks like if you put them, by candidate side by side. But then show the next graph, show the total. So that's actually what it should look like. There's hardly a difference, right, between 2020 and 24. In fact, there's only about a 3 million vote difference. There were 3 million more voters in 2020 than there were in 2024. But when your totals are over 150 million, a 3 million difference in votes is hardly anything. And what's the reason? Why did it spike in 2020? Well, it spiked in 2020 because, COVID came around and they said, hey, we're going to do a bunch of mail-in voting. We're going to require or facilitate and encourage mail-in voting, okay? So that made it easier for people to vote. So a bunch of people plus everybody was sitting at home. There wasn't a lot going on. So you didn't have to actually drive down to the polls. You didn't have to mail it in or whatever. From our, so, rather, you could just mail it in. So everybody just voted from home, and it actually caused an enormous spike in voters. In 2024, there were 3 million fewer voters than in 2020, probably because there were 3 million people that just weren't excited about Trump or Harris. There were probably a lot of Democrats that just said, you know what, I don't like anybody. Now, Trump picked up about 3 million votes. So he had 74.2 million votes in 2020, and he increased to 77.3. So he picked up just over 3 million votes between 2020 and 2024. So it was probably even more Democrats. There were probably a lot of people that didn't vote in 2020, and they decided, hey, you know what? I'm tired of this ridiculousness. I'm voting for Trump. There were probably a bunch of Democrats that said, hey, I'm trying to get rid of Trump, but and so they voted in 2020, but then they said, oh, geez, Harris is a soup sandwich. So they didn't vote in 2024. So I'm not saying there was voter fraud. I'm not saying there wasn't voter fraud. What I am saying is that graph that you see on your screen right now, where, that was produced right after the election before all the votes were counted, you can't use the gap in 2020 and 2024 as some kind of evidence that there was some kind of voter fraud in 2020, because that's just not an accurate graph. You have to go, I would not look at any graphs that were created before, the end of December, because it took the entire month of November to really truly count, and then into December. Does that make sense?
It does.
Alicia?
It does.
Okay.
Correct.
Have you seen that graph before?
The one that you made? No, but
Not the one
this
that I made.
Correct? Yeah, no, I had not yet seen that
Not
one.
my arts and crafts
No,
project.
the one that you have up now,
Yeah.
yes, I have seen that one before.
Yeah, and that just came out. It was confusing, and I get it. Nobody was trying to mislead. It just kind of looked, whatever. But
Right.
anyway. All right, so those are your Q's and your A's. Let's go on to our legal update, lawsuits and legislative update.
So this is a segment known as our legal and legislative segment, where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and legislators. But remember, I'm not a lawyer, and neither is Mike. We are not going to give you legal advice, and all legal advice should come from a properly licensed California attorney. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer. John has been helping more and more people to fight GVROs, and those are gun violence restraining orders. If you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
And this is a very shortened version of. There are a lot of channels that do a really great long analysis on a lot of these things. I don't get deep into the analysis. I just want to touch on things so that you're caught up. Hey, here's what's going on legislatively. Here's what's going on in the courts. For example, Four Boxes Diner. Mark at Four Boxes Diner does a great analysis, in-depth analysis, where I'm going to spend 2 or 3 minutes on something. He's going to spend 10 or 15 minutes on it. By the way, congratulations, Mark. Congratulations, Four Boxes Diner, for winning at the Gundy this year. I'm very, very proud. Well-deserved. You do a fantastic job. First is a victory. CRPA, Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, they sued the LA sheriff and, of course, everybody's favorite Attorney General Rob Bonta. And they got an injunction. So it looks like we got a pretty clear victory here. What this does in this lawsuit is non-Californians will get to apply for a California CCW soon. It's going to take a couple of days or a couple of months for everything to get settled, but that was the gist of the decision. They must be members of CRPA, GOC, GOA, or SAF. So they must be residents of U.S. states or territories, and they must not be a prohibited person. So you have somebody that lives in another state or territory. They're not a prohibited person. They also must be a member of CRPA, GOC, GOA, SAF, and they can actually apply for a California CCW. It was decided that, hey, this must happen. Now, what's the impact? Well, most people listening to this live in California, so it doesn't really matter to us, but there are a number of people who come to California either for business or pleasure. They're going to be able to acquire a CCW from California. They'll be able to carry when they're in California, even though they're not a California resident. That is enormous. That's important. Now the other cool thing, now don't tell, it's just between us. So I'm gonna lean in and whisper. Okay, so this is just between us. The process that they're talking about for people outside of California is actually a lot easier than the process Californians have to go through to get a CCW. So what do you think, what effect is that going to have on Californians? Why is it easier for someone in Nevada or New York or Florida or Oklahoma to get a California CCW? I think it's going to vastly, or at least marginally improve our process here in California. So that's good news for Californians. It was actually about a week ago, somebody contacted me. They were a member of San Diego County Gun Owners. They moved to, I think it was Arizona, and they were applying for their renewal. And they said, nope, can't have your renewal because you're not a resident in California. So
Right.
he, sent me a grr email. And I actually talked to the sheriff, the sheriff's office, and brought this to their attention. I've now showed them this ruling, and we're going to work real hard to make sure that, I think that's probably the most common thing we're going to run into, is people who relocated to wherever, Arizona, Nevada.
Or that just live in a border town and come this way.
Right. But I think it's going to be I think that what we're going to hear about are former San Diego residents who moved out and they want to maintain their CCW. I think this is good for them. So that was good. That was excellent. It was kind of funny when I first started talking about it, because I heard about this case and I'm like, hey, cool, this is great. But then the sheriff's office is like, can't do anything because there's no decision on this thing yet. And I said, gosh, I thought there was. A couple days later, bam, decision. I'm like,
There it is.
I was just early. That's all. I wasn't wrong. I was early. So anyway, that's really, really good news. By the way, $10 super chat from Mike White. Mike White, thank you so much. You are absolutely awesome. Appreciate your support. Love that you listen to us. I hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for your generosity. Okay, next case is Teeter versus Lopez. This is an interesting case that has to do with butterfly knives. There was a ban on butterfly. You know what a butterfly knife is?
Oh, yeah.
It's an adorable little fluttery knife.
It's very pretty.
Like, it looks like a little monarch, but I know. It's that knife that you used to see in the 80s in all the martial arts movies, where they...
Yep.
In fact, you know what? There was a butterfly knife in Red Dawn. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Robert had a butterfly knife. Remember the scene when he was carving into the stock of his AK,
Right.
all the kills, and the lieutenant colonel said, all that hate's going to burn you up inside.
Yeah.
And he said, it keeps me warm. And then he did
my
his butterfly
soul.
knife thing.
My boys have a butterfly spoon.
A butterfly spoon?
Yeah.
That's kind of awesome. Okay, so here's what happened. So there's a ban in Hawaii on butterfly knives. A guy named Teeter sued to be able to own a butterfly knife based on the Second Amendment. He said, hey, this is an arm, I have the right to keep and bear arms. The district court upheld the ban. So he took it to district court, and they said, yeah, it's fine for them to ban this kind of arm. He then went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a 3-judge panel. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said that the ban is, in fact, a violation of the Second Amendment. So that's a very positive ruling. That's a good thing. So here's where things got a little twisted. Rather than go to a full en banc, which would be a bigger panel, it's not every judge in the Ninth Circuit, but it's far more than 3.
It's like 11,
Yeah.
I believe, around
That
there.
was even more than that. But anyway, it was on its way to an en banc. And then the state of Hawaii said, wait a minute, we're going to make it legal. Okay. So they went back and said, actually what happened was it was going towards an en banc. Okay. Which means that the ruling from the panel basically disappears. If it goes to an en banc, then the ruling before that from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in effect, disappears. Now, I'm using layman's language, and I'm, shortening this, but basically that's what happens. Is they say, all right, well, this is going to go to en banc. This is going to go to a bigger panel than 3 judges. Therefore, the decision, you're agreeing that this decision by the appeals judges disappears, just goes away, completely disappears. After that agreement, Hawaii said, well, we're going to make butterfly knives legal. And then we're going to go back to the court and say, hey, it's moot. The point is moot. There's no longer any reason to hear this case because we have now made butterfly knives legal. Well, yay, right? That's terrific. They won. Here's the problem. So that's the good news. The good news is if you're in Hawaii, you can get a butterfly knife right now, thanks to them changing the law. And I got to tell you, changing public policy is a good thing. I don't care why people behave. I just care that they behave. So the fact that the legislators in Hawaii behaved and changed the law on the surface is a good thing. Here's the bad news. That case is gone. It's as if it never happened now. There's no precedent. In fact, it doesn't apply to the rest of the Ninth Circuit. It's as if it never happened. So basically what it looks like is the Ninth Circuit, the Hawaii legislators or, the anti-gun attorneys saw the writing on the wall and said, hey, we don't want this thing to apply to the entire Ninth Circuit. We're about to get, shellacked here. So change the law, and then we don't have to have this bad precedent sitting out there. That's kind of what it looks like happened there. So kind of mixed news. Hawaii, congratulations. Do the little whippy thing with your butterfly knife and enjoy your victory. But unfortunately, the rest of the Ninth Circuit, we didn't get a positive ruling on that because the case was ruled moot. There was actually a judge on the Ninth Circuit who dissented. He wrote his dissent, basically said, hey, his name's Judge Van Dyke. He was a Trump appointee, and there was a fantastic decision that he wrote basically saying, hey, you guys are playing games here. We should honor what was said in the Bruin case, et cetera, et cetera. So, but that's that case. You needed to know that. That's pretty much the end of that case. Who knows what will happen in the future. Assault weapons ban cases. We're hoping that the Supreme Court takes one of two or three that are out there, and there's been no movement. So I just wanted to touch on that. Not much more to go into, but we're running out of time. It's almost the end of the month. It's the 26th, and they haven't said anything yet. One piece of good news is, of course, there was the inauguration, which is wonderful, and I think it was within hours of Trump actually taking office. If you go to the website for the White House's website, the White House Department of Gun Violence Prevention, if you go look up their web page on the White House website, you get to see this beautiful placeholder. They are gone. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention is gone. There was a suggestion out there, and we talked about it, that had to, it was basically a little bit of an internal debate in the gun community, like, hey, maybe we should take this office and turn it into something positive. And it was like, hey, no, maybe we should get rid of it. Well, clearly they decided to get rid of it. And I think that's the right choice. Get rid of this thing. The way they were trying to use government was wrong. I don't think it's okay for us to use government wrong just because we agree with the results. So it is gone. After 400 days of existing, there no longer is a White House Department of Gun Violence Prevention. Gone, gone, gone. Now, I'll tell you, San Diego, the county of San Diego still has a Department of Gun Violence Prevention. 400 days ago, after the White House implemented this catastrophe, the county of San Diego, which we fought back, we actually defeated it at one point, and then it came back. But the San Diego has its own Department of Gun Violence Prevention, and it's something we have to keep our eye on. But it is not, in fact, for gun violence prevention. It is for gun ownership and gun use and carrying guns prevention. It is an anti-gun government group. That's all it is. Okay, got some ATF news for you. There's two bits of good news. ATF news. Here you go. First is Cargill, who you will remember. Mr. Cargill was the guy from Texas who got the bump stock ban overturned when he sued the ATF. He is an FFL. Cargill's an FFL. So he sued the ATF's new policy. They had a zero tolerance policy. The zero tolerance policy came in under Biden. And what it meant was, hey, any mistake an ATF makes, we're going to jump on their head and pull their license, okay? So they got rid of the zero tolerance policy. The ATF has new guidance, and it's really the old guidance before the Biden's zero tolerance. What happened was in 2021, Biden said he was going after, and this was the quote, rogue firearms dealers. But instead, he basically went after all firearms dealers because every FFL makes an honest mistake or two here and there. And that's what the zero tolerance was. They no longer had any tolerance for any mistake of any kind, whether it was an honest minor mistake or not. It actually resulted in a 500% increase in the number of FFLs being put out of business. A 500% increase in the amount of FFLs being put out of business. Now, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, they're the guys that supplied the lawyers in this case. They actually gave this example, which I thought really illustrated the the problem with the zero tolerance policy. Quote, for example, in Florida, a multi-generational firearm dealer, JM Gun Repair, had its license revoked earlier this year, actually back in 2024, based on simple paperwork errors. These include mistakes as innocuous as a buyer filling out the county blank by writing USA. So there's a blank on the form, the 4470 form, right?
4473.
4473 form.
Correct.
That says, hey, what county are you in? And some people read that as country.
That happens daily.
It happens all the time.
Daily.
USA. Yep. So they said, oh, country, USA. Okay. When actually they're asking for county. Mm-hmm. Filling out the county blank by writing USA, having mistaken it for country. Similar stories have begun to emerge from firearms dealers nationwide. Many of these stores had been in business for decades and believed they had good working relationships with the ATF. Those relationships have been shattered by this new zero tolerance policy, end quote. That was put out again by the Texas Public Policy Foundation about the zero tolerance policy. I will say again, ATF agents are predatory. The ATF agency is a predatory agency. They are not your friend. They are not pro-Second Amendment. They're absolutely horrible and should be muzzled. And that's the second piece of good news. The second piece of good news is, and there's been a lot of talk. It's not the first time I've said the ATF is a predatory agency, and hey, should they be disbanded? Should they be muzzled? What should happen? Well, one of the really cool things that Trump decided to do is ATF agents are now being pulled from their ATF duties and being used to deport illegal aliens. So it's I think for the next few months, or for at least for the foreseeable short-term future, you're going to see a lot less activity from ATF agents because they're going to be busy fulfilling the campaign promise of making sure that dangerous illegal aliens. That's not to say that all illegal aliens are dangerous. That's to say that they're targeting illegal aliens who have proven to be dangerous. They're getting deported, and they're using ATF agents to do that. So all these predatory anti-gun federal law enforcement jerkies now get to go make sure that we're not being infiltrated by dangerous foreign people who are here illegally. How about that? Enjoy the next couple of years, ATF. And that's all you need to know this week, legislatively and from the courts.
All right, that's our legal and legislative segment.
Wha-bam. Okay.
Rich is looking for the button.
You looking for the button?
He's looking for the button.
All right. Skip the button. Skip the button. What's in the box? All right. What are we doing next? Next, we have a guest. Is the guest there, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so our next guest, very, very cool, Anna Cannon, which is the perfect name for this guest, and you'll see why. She's the high school clay target league leader. She's a lifelong award-winning educator. Anna was the head of the agricultural department of Orland High School. She was an advisor for Future Farmers of America, and she is now the state director at California State High School Clay Target League. The USA Clay Target League is actually a nonprofit corporation and the nation's leading independent provider of clay target shooting sports to secondary and post-secondary schools. I like this. The league's priorities are safety, fun, and marksmanship. in that order. So before we talk to Anna, I want to let everybody know this segment is sponsored by Cargo, Cases and Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com. They're on 423 Broadway, El Cajon, or go to cargostores.com and order from them directly. I wanted to show you, we had Michael, the owner of Cargo, on last week, and I wanted to show you a couple of examples of the things that he makes and sells. One is this really cool case for a pistol, which on the outside looks like many other cases. It's nicely made, extremely high quality. But then let me show you when you open this up. How about a little music? No? Okay. Thank you. Check that out. So it's actually custom made for this one. Looks like it's for an M&P, and it actually has a breakdown, of all the different parts of an M&P, a Smith & Wesson M&P. And then it's got a custom-made foamy place for your magazine and your gun. And it's extremely, extremely durable. It's extremely, extremely nicely made and high quality and high class, which I think is really, really cool. That's one of the things you can get at Cargo. Here's one of the other cool things that I pulled that I wanted to show you. This looks like a magazine, right? Looks like about a 30-round magazine, right?
1030, yep.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, but it's not for ammo. This is for batteries. How cool is that? So if you have a neat, which everybody does, man, I have so many batteries like floating around.
Yeah.
So if you need an organizational system, especially for your double A's, there you go. You can put it in your magazine. They sell those. They make those. These are for double A's. You can see on the side there. It shows the caliber of battery, AA. So check those out at Cargo. And the last thing before we go to our interview is, what do you keep in your wallet? This is a self-defense spear card. It's only $19.95. If you look super close, you can keep this in your wallet, and it's a survival tool. So if you're out in the wild, you find yourself in a survival situation, you can break this off. These are all made of metal. There's a little saw. There's some fishing hooks there, and then the big one is a spearhead. Mm-hmm. You see that? See how you can break that off?
Spare button and a needle.
Spare button? Oh yeah, that's right.
And Mike was telling me you can pop all those pieces out, use them, and you just simply replace them. And it'll like kind of lock into place and hold itself. So once you pop them out, it's not done with.
There you go.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. That's the kind of stuff you can buy at Cargo. And thank you so much, Michael and Cargo, for sponsoring this segment. So now let's talk to Anna. Anna, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you guys?
Good. Thank you so much for being on the show, and a big thanks for doing so much for TRAP and the youth and everything that you do. What an awesome person you are, and what a great career you've had.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk a little
The
bit
youth
about
is what it's all about.
it. Is truly. Talk a little bit about it. Now you're here in California, right?
Northern California, yes.
Northern California, and talk a little bit about the high school trap league that you run and what your goals are and some of the things that you're proud of.
So as a state director for the California State High School Clay Cricket League, we actually offer 4 disciplines, trap being one of them, as well as sporting clay, skeet, and 5 stand. So the teams in the state can participate in for all of those in 2 seasons. We have a spring season and a fall season. And the increase in participation has been amazing. We started in 2017, and I'm entrenched in it. My team was the first team in the state, Orland High School.
Wow.
And then we had a second team, which was in your guys' vicinity, down in, down from where I am at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. They were joined. And so our first year we had 36 kids and 2 teams.
Wow.
And then fast forward to this year, and we have 43 teams are approved in the state. And
43
last
teams
year,
across the
last
state?
season, across the state, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, from the Oregon border, Wairika is the furthest north, and there's a Christian high school in San Diego has been approved to have a team.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. I forget the name, but they're out in El Cajon. I can't remember. It'll come to me. So we used to have trap and marksmanship in high schools.
I did rifle shooting in high school.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
time. What
We did it in
happened?
the
And
classroom.
then they all kind of disappeared. What happened? Where did they all go, Anna?
Well, yeah, that's kind of where all lap fields went after, it was so popular in the 70s and 80s. And then I think environmental impacts started to close down fields. And so people quit shooting.
Hmm.
And now there's a lot of areas that it's hard to find a trap field or a sporting clay field. I know in our local area, we have none. We have to do sporting clays. Our closest range is a half an hour, but the better ranges are over an hour away. So I think that has been a big reason that a lot of the shooting sports have disappeared in this state.
And what if someone were wondering, like, well, why is that a big deal? How would you describe what are kids missing out on if they don't have, trap or marksmanship or this type of league to participate in?
Discipline is one of the biggest things that they get out of it. Discipline and responsibility. And then just like the league motto, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But when they get together and they get to shoot as a team, when they start out as a team, but then as they grow, and if you guys have ever any shotgun sports, any sport, any shooting sports, it's an individual event. Even though you might be participating on a team, you're still putting up an individual score and you're learning individually. So
Yeah.
it gives them a lot of information about themselves, teaches them responsibility, teaches firearm safety, which is ultimately the best thing for them. And it's going to produce a better citizen and somebody who supports our Second Amendment rights in the future.
That's very, very true. I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the show, I was saying my next gun. I gave up my shotgun to my nephew for the gun I used to use for sporting clays, and my next gun's going to be a double barrel side by side. I'm going like Jed Clampett style. So I don't know.
You
What
could
do you?
start doing the single action shooting society.
Yeah, right. That'd be awesome. So you've been so successful setting up these programs again, and thank you so much for doing all this hard work. But when you do approach a new school, what's the biggest myth or misconception that you have to overcome when you're talking to a school about implementing this kind of program?
There's so many people that fear firearms. And so trying to overcome that is the biggest step. And the kids can be excited. We go to FFA conventions and talk to the kids, and they'll be excited. And then when they have to, it's a club at the high school level. And so they have to get it approved by the principal. And if they have a principal that's anti firearms, they're never going to sign off on starting this club at the high school level. So that's the biggest issue. We have a team in San Jose, and there was a public school and a private school side by side. Husband and wife were going to be the coaches, and the private school went through all the steps to get approved and started their club. And the public school actually had their lawyer call me and talk to me and say, we will never have kids touch firearms in school. So side by side, same town, just different belief systems. So that's the biggest obstacle that we see.
I would guess that obviously a lawyer or somebody, he's all about CYA, and it's just easier to say no than it is to say, hey, we'll try or whatever. But I would imagine that there are probably a lot of people that are not necessarily anti and aren't necessarily pro, but are just afraid of what criticism might come, and that they're more afraid.
That's true.
And I talked to one of the things we have to do culturally, as activists in California, is we have to make those folks, the folks that are kind of in the middle, they have to fear our complaining more than they fear the other side's complaining. And I think right now they solidly are far more fearful of the anti-gun folks criticizing and complaining than they are the pro Second Amendment folks. Do you think that's accurate, or?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think a lot of people, matter of fact, the most recent principal that I spoke to, he had a personal fear of firearms. He had been a hunter and had seen some terrible things, and I couldn't blame him for for having a distaste for firearms after the story you told me, but he was still realized that it was such a good opportunity for the students and everyone gets to participate. There's no bench warmers, and he knew it would be a good opportunity for his kids. And so he was a bigger person and was stepping over his personal fears, but a lot of people can't do that. We do
It
need to
is
be a
that
bigger voice.
if you've had some kind of horrible traumatic experience and there was a firearm involved, I think that it takes an extraordinary person to be able to put that aside. But if you are in
That's true.
if you're in a position where you're a decision maker, whether you're a legislator and you've had a horrible traumatic experience that involved a firearm, or if you're a policymaker at a school or something like that, you got to be able to recognize that you have a personal bias and get out of the way, and say, hey, you know what, I can't be the one to make this decision because I have a horrible bias against firearms because of an experience I had, which sounds like what this guy did. So kudos to him. What an awesome job for him to recognize that. Talk about it and then recognize it, and then set it aside and make sure that it moved forward without interruption or block from his personal bias. I think that's a great story.
I think it's a sign.
Yeah, that was one of the good stories, right? And then a lot of them, they let that personal bias judge what they can give to the students and just say no.
Yep, I think that speaks to that. If you look at people that let their bias influence their decisions, I think those are people that, for a large part, they haven't processed their trauma. They haven't, and if they kind of work through it, I think they become more open.
That's deep.
Right. Yeah. So California had this goofy law a couple of years ago. It was a law regarding
2571.
There you go. That's the advertising any kind of firearms function to youth, right? How did that affect your program?
Yeah. Our shut down. We're one of two, there's two major leagues in the state, and California Youth Shooting Sports Association is another one, and both leagues shut down for a while because everyone was fearful of that fine that you'd receive if you advertised. Coaches were liable to be fined. Anybody advertising, and the biggest part that came about is the poor juniors and seniors that were trying to go to college and set on colleges, and they were denied that because colleges would not approach California anymore. And they still are having issues. The law's not gone. Right. It's just in the courts. And so the kids that were denied, everything, their teams, access to the shooting sports, it was a bad thing. And when I called the governor's office because he signed it as an emergency executive order, and so it went into effect immediately, they had no idea that there were youth shooting teams in the state. So they did no research. It was just a gut reaction.
And I would imagine that even if they did, it was really by design. I don't think they're on the extreme end of the anti-gun side. And by the way, the extreme end of the anti-gun folks is pretty mainstream when it comes to anti-gun folks. They really kind of start right in the smack dab middle of extreme. But I would imagine that part of the deal was, they don't really see a scenario where any exposure to kids regarding firearms is a good thing. You would think that, hey, we're teaching them to be responsible and safe and educated on firearms. That is a good thing. That is something that, if they do run across firearms for any reasons, whether they decide to pursue the sport or not, any level of education where kids are better suited to deal with running into firearms is a good thing. So, keeping them from doing that doesn't make any sense at all.
That's correct. Yeah. And we are the safest sport, the shooting sports, because the first thing we teach is safety. And when these kids go into this sport, they have to have certifications. They can come in with a hunter safety card, or in our league, the California State High School Clay Target League, can take our safety certification. and 65% of the kids in the league actually do that, take that specific certification. So they come in with all the safety knowledge, and they're nationwide. Since 2008, we have 0 gun-related accidents in our league. And right now we have over 53,000 kids across the nation with 71 million targets thrown and 0 accidents.
Wow. Congratulations. I don't even think, I
Yeah,
mean,
you can't say that about other sports.
you can't, so you can't say that about other sports, but it's pretty par for the course when it comes to shooting. You know, if you're around shooting sports, it's enormously safe. You know, that's what you find. You know, if you go to a gun club or you go to a gun range or you go to a league, you know, whether it's a pistol, rifle, or shotgun league of some kind, that's generally what you find. Is that they're extremely safe. They're extremely accident free. You know, it's very, very rare. I'm just thinking back. I used to do sporting clays once a month for years. I haven't been in a while, which is why I got to get my new shotgun.
Your side by side out.
Yeah, I got to get my my train tracks. And
Good luck with that.
Yeah, but I can only remember a couple of incidences that happened, and they were all they weren't even gun related. Like, you know, they were like somebody had they potentially had a heart attack. Had nothing to do with shooting. You know, there's no. It's just very, very rare. We're extremely safe, and I think it's something to be proud of and something to brag about. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome, and it's a great opportunity for students to participate. Our league goes down to 6th grade. We have 28% of our kids 6th through 8th graders, and 72% are high school kids. They can letter in it. They can be in the yearbook. So it's a pretty neat opportunity for students to have a high school sport too. A lot of kids, their only sport. I think it's like over 60% of the kids that participate, it's the only sport that they do in high school.
That's fantastic. What's your favorite success story?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
What's your favorite success story? Do you have a particular student that had a particularly great story, or what's your favorite success story since you've been doing this?
I have one young lady who showed up to participate. She can do it her freshman year in high school. So she came in because she was on a hunting trip, so she couldn't come when she needed to shoot. So she missed out on being part of the team. And she came in and she use a rifle, but she could not use a shotgun. She couldn't break any clays. So her first season, she probably broke 30 clays out of hundreds. And it was pretty disappointing for her, but she came back. She was determined. She was resilient. And she was the one that was affected and is my spokesperson when we go to the Capitol with the RPA about not being recruited by colleges because she was in that AB 2571 as a junior and ready to go. And all she wanted to do was shooting sports. And she went from only breaking a few clays to being the top female shooter in the state for 2 out of 3 seasons.
Wow.
So that pretty amazing young lady. And she's come back to help us coach, and she's gotten her cousins to shoot with us. And she continues to just become a legislative voice for young people. And she offsets what the legislators think a firearm owner is. And one of the gentlemen in the Capitol said that he thought it was all a bunch of old white guys. And so this cute little girl that comes in, petite little thing, and she's going, yeah, I'm the top shooter in the state. And so she has a really neat story to tell.
Oh, good for her. Congratulate her for us. That's what an awesome story. And a student can show up can they show up, but they have to have any experience? Do they even have to have a shotgun, or if they show up with a passion and an interest, they'll get taken care of, or how does that work?
Yep, they'll get taken care of. Our team, and most of the teams, they have team shotguns, which is a whole different ball game in the state of California.
Yeah.
And a lot of the teams provide ammunition through donations and grants, and the clays. So They are partially subsidized on most of the teams. They do a lot of fundraising events. And yeah, any kid that wants to learn how to shoot can come out. We had a 10-year-old out the other day, and he was pretty small, but he has passion. So he's going to be on the junior team. And then we have another high school kid that's a junior in high school, never has shot before, and she's ready to try it. So yeah, any level. And then the ones that are probably the hardest to teach are the kids that are already out there shooting waterfowl and upland game, because they know everything about shotguns. So when you put them on a trap field or on a sporting clay range, they're not as good as they are in the field. So that's kind of fun to work with.
They already have different habits or whatever.
Right.
It's probably easier to start with a clean slate.
Yeah, and the girls listen better than the boys.
Yes, they do.
So oftentimes the boys are better shooters overall, but the girls are definitely closing in on them. And in this league, we recognize, just like the Olympics, there's girl awards and boy awards, so male and female awards, and then the top overall can be anybody.
That's awesome. How can people get involved? Do you have a call to action, or what would you like people to what can people do now that they've heard this interview? Is there a way to support you, a website, or what's your call to action?
We need people that are affiliated with high schools, whether it's a teacher or a parent or kids, to get these teams started at high school level so more people can have an opportunity. I've had so many inquiries in the San Diego area to start teams, and people just need to talk to their principal and get that going. The way to get a hold of us is at caclaytarget.com. And you can see what California does and our numbers, and our spring season starts next month for registering. So there's plenty of time to get teams signed up. And the uniqueness about us is that we're school based. We're not just a youth team. You can go out to a range, shoot on a youth team, but we're high school based. We're high school club. And we also branch out at home schools and college as well. So that person that's passionate to get involved. So caclaytarget.com is the way to find out more information about starting a team in California.
Perfect. Anna Cannon. By the way, perfect name for what you do.
Thanks.
Love it. Anna Cannon, appreciate everything you've done. Appreciate the interview. Awesome job. And please send my best to everybody that you work with from Gun Owners Radio. And thank you. Thank you so much. What an interesting interview that was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Anna. All right.
You too.
There you go. That was interesting. So it's caclaytarget.com. Check them out. Right? Did I get that right? I hope so.
I believe so.
Okay. So get that right. And if you know anybody, especially anywhere in California, if you know somebody who's affiliated with a school and they want to start a league, let's get them rolling. So awesome. There you go.
That's it.
That's it. Button. Who's got the button? Okay, every week we find a defensive gun use story, and Alicia tells us the ins and outs. She's Alicia Curtin, so we call it the Curtin Call. This week is I Gotta Protect My Family. Homeowner defends household during late night break-in. Take it, Alicia. What do we got?
All right. Well, this story is fairly short. I actually want to read it to you. I want to give it to you in full because I have a lot that I want to talk about.
Okay.
So this one's out of Kent, Washington. And the article comes from usacarry.com. And it states, a homeowner in Kent, Washington faced a terrifying encounter when an intruder broke into his home during the early hours of Tuesday morning, forcing him to take defensive action to protect his family. And this was just September of last year. The incident occurred around 1:27 a.m., so middle of the night. Most of us are sleeping. They give the address location, and as reported by the Kent Police Department, the homeowner, who remains unnamed for privacy concerns, however they gave his address, recounts that he was awakened by the sudden presence of an intruder in his bedroom. The man, described as over 6'5", had turned on the bedroom light, catching the homeowner, his wife, and several family members off guard. In the state of shock, the homeowner acted quickly. He grabbed objects, and this was good, quick thinking. He grabbed objects from a nearby nightstand, striking the intruder and forcing him out of the bedroom. This brief moment of distraction allowed the homeowner to access his safe and retrieve his firearm.
Wow.
With 5 children also in the house, the homeowner felt an urgent need to defend them. I shot 2 rounds, he told the KOMO News, uncertain at the time if the shots had struck the intruder. Kent police received a call later that morning around 3:05, so roughly an hour and a half later, a.m., reporting a man with a gunshot wound at an apartment, and they give the address, approximately 15 minutes from the scene of the break-in. The wounded individual matched the description of the burglary suspect. Officers applied emergency treatment. He was transported to a hospital with a gunshot wound to the torso. He was identified as a 30-year-old man. Authorities confirmed that the homeowner, who legally owned his firearm and possessed a concealed pistol license, acted lawfully in the defense of his family. Reflecting on the event, the homeowner expresses that he would not hesitate to repeat his actions if his family's safety was at risk. This is my home. I got to protect my family, and that's just the end of it, he stated. And that's all the information that we have on this one. So
it sounds like it's pretty clean, pretty straight.
It is
Self-defense situation.
Absolutely. A couple things. One is it mentioned that the homeowner woke up, lights were turned on, and that was not somebody who was looking to discreetly steal your jewelry out of your jewelry box, right?
If they were turning on lights,
Right.
so they broke into the house and they're turning on lights.
That's what the article states. Correct.
They're not sneaking around and trying to grab your VCR and disappear.
Right. Correct. So a couple things. One is he had the forethought, and just in that, imagine being woken up, being startled, right, scared. He had the presence of mind in that moment to think to start throwing things, to kind of throw things at him, to get him to, because he knew, it sounds like he knew that he couldn't get to his gun in time.
Yeah.
Right. So he had the ability to kind of think to do that. That was pretty wise, I think. Second of all, sounds like he was able to get to his firearm pretty quickly. We know, especially here in 2026, it depends on where you're at in the state now, but in 2026, everybody's going to have all their firearms locked up. Even you, Mike.
No.
Right. So how quick? It sounds like he was able to get to pretty quick. So what is your setup at home? If you already lock yours, how long does it take you to get to it? If you ever practice that, take some time. Not only time yourself, from the moment of, the go, how long does it take you to get it out? Imagine layering onto that, being woken up and startled in your sleep. Like, how long does it really take you to be able to get to it?
Yeah.
That's important. If he had to sit there and mess with that stupid cable lock.
Right.
Right.
Or swipe his fingerprint, like it doesn't work the first time.
Right.
And didn't work the second time. And it's like, wait a minute,
Right.
It was the other thumb.
Right. Or if you had to go and find a key. Wait, my key's in my dresser drawer
Right.
across the room.
Yeah,
right.
You got to get your reading glasses first. And then...
So think about the reality. How are you storing your firearms? If you don't, or you store them in a way that you can quickly get to them, you might need to make some changes. So give that some thought. Another thought that I had as I was reading this, they mentioned that he has a home with 5 children. Doesn't state what type of firearm that he shot with. So we know pistol rounds are going to penetrate walls most of the time,
Yeah.
right? Unless they hit studs or some, something sturdy. Assume that your rounds are going to go through walls. But the reality, what's your backdrop? What's rule 4? Know your target, what's beyond. Some thought. Was this a shotgun? Was it a handgun? If it was a shotgun, maybe consideration, was it birdshot, so that he didn't have to be as concerned about penetration through that wall? Bedrooms, right? Kids. What's your home defense gun? Think about that. The reality, if you ever had to take a shot, what's your backdrop likely going to be?
Yeah,
is that going to be a loved one? Is that going to be, is there a neighbor? Is it a neighbor you like or you don't like? A child's bedroom, what is your backdrop likely going to be? And what is your home defense gun? Is that going to be, is it one that's going to likely penetrate? And if it does, you've got to take that into account. So just kind of some things just to think about. In this case, it sounded like everything came out well. The only one that was hit was the one who asked for it.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
I'm glad he and his family were safe. I'm glad
Absolutely.
his five kids.
5 kids.
I'm glad he and his 5 kids were safe.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
amazing.
2 rounds, 1 hit in the torso. No mention of the other.
And this is Washington,
Kent,
state of Washington.
Yep, state of Washington.
Yeah, that's a formerly pro Second Amendment state, but they're sliding down the slippery slope. Or have slid down, really.
Right.
Cool. What else? Anything else
That's
we
it.
need to know about that?
That was what I really kind of walked away with, was just the idea of locking and securing your firearm. If you do, how quick, just make sure you can get to it quick. And the secondary, what type of firearm is your home defense gun? Keep in mind what's your backdrop.
And it doesn't sound like he had to put up with any kind of legal challenge. Sounds like they
Doesn't
said
sound like it.
pretty clean
Nope.
castle doctrine, self-defense case. Mm-hmm. All right.
That's it.
Well, there you go. That's your curtain call. Alicia Curtin, thank you so much. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
Okay, deployment. We need to tell you where you need to go, what you need to do. This is all for the activism in you. We want to make activism easy. And this is brought to you by Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee. That's rwbbcoffee.com. rwbbcoffee.com. Use GOR and you'll get 15% off. So order some coffee. Enjoy some of their delicious coffee every morning as you wake up to do activism and support a local coffee company who's pro Second Amendment. Of course, we had Dustin in. Was that last week now, or was it the week prior?
Yeah, I believe it was last week.
Yeah, it was last week. Yeah, what an interesting guy Dustin is. I'm glad he's doing well, and I thank him for such a moving and candid interview. He did a great job. Okay, learning the how to shoot is the easy part. Learning when and how to navigate a defensive gun use incident is the hard part. Learn from a national expert, Masad Ayub, at the class, Armed Citizens Rules of Engagement. That's coming up March 8th and 9th. Knowledge is your best defense. Sign up now at gunownersradio.com. Just click the link for Mastering Self-Defense. Masad Ayub. Mas is coming out March 8th and 9th. Do not miss this
Sunday.
opportunity. It's a Saturday and a Sunday in a very, very nice, comfortable classroom. Should be a good time, should be informational, and there are no more live fire spots. This is just a lecture, so don't miss out on that. You already missed the live fire, unless you got the live fire. So sign up for the class. And that's what we got for you as far as deployment this week. Pretty easy. Are you going? You're going, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yep.
I'm going to go there too. I'm going to take notes.
All right.
All right. Let's talk to Sam. All right, everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew. My nephew, Sam the gunman. We found out he's really good at trivia, so every week you write us an email and ask us a really cool gun trivia question, and he'll tell you the answer. And if he knows it, sometimes he'll tell you the answer even if he doesn't know it, and he still gets it right. If we use your question on the air, you're going to get you'll get a hat or a shirt. And if you stump my knucklehead nephew, then you'll get a really cool special prize. This is sponsored by Seal One, seal1.com. Their website, seal1.com. Seal1.com makes gun ownership easier and smell better. The live fire class with Masad Ayub is sold out, like I mentioned before, but here's your chance to win big. A 4-day MAG 40 class with Moss himself. That's both live fire and classroom training, an incredible opportunity, and it's a $1,000, it's actually over $1,000 value. So here's how you enter. Go to seal1.com, spend $25 or more, and you're in. It's that simple. Don't wait. Stock up now. Secure your chance to train with the best. So just go to seal1.com, spend $25. You'll be entered to win, and you could win a 4-day class with the legendary Masad Ayub. So, Sam, how you doing, bud? Where's Sam?
You just got disconnected.
Oh, no.
Look at that. Is it because I called him a knucklehead? I knew it.
He just
He can be
just literally just
he can be so sensitive.
I have something that I want to talk about while we'll
All right.
get him back.
What do you got?
Let me grab it.
Where are you going?
Grab that.
Everybody's leaving?
Everybody's leaving.
All right, dear listener, it's just you and I. So What do you got? Oh, more cargo stuff?
Some more cargo stuff.
All right,
We're waiting
bust
for
it
Sam.
out.
All right.
So this is Cargo and El Cajon. They're a sponsor of the show. Michael was here last week, and he's a wonderful guy, and Cargo's a wonderful shop. So show him what you got.
All right. So I stopped by, talked to Mike, hung out, and did some fun stuff. By the way, he had this on the counter. I had to pick this up for me. It's a really cool. It's like that business card holder, but it's for books. I thought
It's a Glock book holder.
That's it. But he has, as we talked about before, he has just a really fun shop full of anything and everything, survival, adventure, anything you could want. This one here is pretty cool. This is a case here. This is made, he custom cuts the foam. This one here, it has a really cool emblem up top. He did 3D print some demo magazines. But this here will hold 21 1030 mags.
Yeah.
Banana clips or any AR mag really. And so that's pretty rad. It holds up to 21. And so that was pretty cool. So there's that custom case there.
And that's just one use for that
That's
case.
just one, absolutely.
You can do a ton
Right.
of things with that case.
Right, that's how he has the foam custom cut. You
Yeah.
can do it your own way. You can have him cut it, laser it, do it, whatever you want for you. But it's just one example of another rad thing that you can do that I
There
never
you
would have
go.
thought of.
What else can you get at Cargo?
He's really big on everything being American made. If you ever spend time talking to Mike. So of course, a lot of people are familiar if you go out and adventure with Life Straw, but he also has an American U.S. made version called from Aquamira. So that was pretty cool. So if you're an adventurer, camper.
So that's an American made version of the Life Straw?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yep, and he did have different sizes. I thought that was pretty cool. Of course, anything self-defense related, little stun guns, pepper
Shocking.
spray, right? Shocking.
He has one of those?
Very creative.
Shocking.
That's it. So anyway, but self-defense, we talk, obviously we're second A, right?
Wait, hold that up again?
Which one? Both?
There you go. Alicia, you look stunning. How about that?
That's it.
Valentine's
So
Day's
wise.
coming up, everybody.
That's it.
You want your date to look stunning? That's what you
it.
buy them. Okay, cool. All right, let's try this again with old Sam the Gunman. Okay, Sam the Gunman, my nephew, everybody's favorite segment. Stump my nephew. Everybody knows the rules. One bite. So seal1.com. Go to seal1.com. They're the sponsor. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Sam, how you doing, bud?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Doing great, man. Doing really, really great. How's all the snow? You got a bunch of snow going on up there?
It's just starting to melt.
Nice. All right. Okay. So here we go. You want your question? You ready for it?
Sure, I guess.
You got to stretch your hammies or anything before you answer it, or just go right into it?
Oh, no, I did that before I dialed in.
There you go. That's my nephew. Okay. Jack from Portland writes, the first recorded use of gunpowder in warfare occurred in China around 1000 AD, where it was used to propel grenades and fire arrows. But before its use in warfare, gunpowder was used medically. Name a medical use of gunpowder.
Jack from Portland. Don't know if it's Portland, Oregon or Portland, Maine. Thanks for writing in. What was the first medical use of gunpowder?
Yeah.
Now, that's an interesting one. First of all, the gunpowder that was used back then is, most of you know, it's not the same as gunpowder now. What we have now is a nitrocellulose-based, or something similar to nitrocellulose-based smokeless powder. But the gunpowder they had back then was made of charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate, or saltpeter, as it was called in antiquity. Now, as for medical uses, I'm not a doctor. I'm not your doctor. Don't take this as medical advice. I'm not super familiar with uses of gunpowder, medical uses of gunpowder, but I have heard before that you can use it to cauterize wounds because it burns so rapidly. I don't know how correct that might be. I know sulfur has its own medicinal purposes, and charcoal has medicinal purposes. In fact, it's still used to reduce risk of injury from poisoning. There are charcoal tablets for that. But yeah, the only thing I can think of offhand is cauterizing wounds. Maybe that's all I've got.
Well, if you've seen Rambo 3, you know that they absolutely can use gunpowder to cauterize a wound. I'm sure that everything that happened in Rambo 3 was medically accurate.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't it be? But that is one of the things listed. I read a little bit about it. Don't do that. Do not recommend that people cauterize wounds using gunpowder. In fact, I read a lot of articles that said that yes, they used to do it, but especially these days with modern gunpowder, you're probably going to do more harm than good. But that is one. One of the others is they used to use it to treat burns. They used to use it to make skin grafts. And then the other is, I guess it is a painkiller as well, like a topical painkiller that whatever it was made of. What all was it made of before?
It's a roughly 5-to-1 mixture by volume of potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal.
So apparently, if you put that on something that hurts, it'll help it not hurt anymore. I don't know what piece of that, but that seemed to be the most reliable, legitimate use of what gunpowder used to be. Is they used to use it as a painkiller. But
well, there are other types of, I guess you could say, dangerous substances that do have legitimate medical uses. Nitroglycerin is a notable example. It was used as a blasting explosive in the American West when they were working on mining operations and working on the Transcontinental Railroad. But many people know that it also has use as a heart medication.
There you go. Or
now,
you can gas up your funny car with it.
Using any type of gunpowder, smokeless or black powder, to cauterize a wound definitely falls within that category of it's safe to advise no one to do it under. It's safe to advise that no one should do that under any circumstances, because the very few people who know how to do it correctly know that that doesn't apply to them. Same with chest darts for relieving tension pneumothorax. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to be Mr. Cool operator trauma medic guy with chest darts in my trauma kit. If you don't know how to use them, you will cause worse problems. Don't do that. Don't try to cauterize wounds with gunpowder.
There you go. When I first read it, I figured it was, I don't know, I thought it might be like a toothpaste. You know, they use baking soda for toothpaste. Thought maybe that, gunpowder might, you're looking at me like I'm.
Well, you could use I guess you could use the charcoal. I've heard of charcoal being used in toothpaste, but not as mixed gunpowder. I don't think you should do it with the complete finished product.
That's true. All right, my friend. Awesome job. You got it right. You picked one of the medical uses of gunpowder that was used mostly by China. It looked like China really had I read a little bit about this. This was an interesting question from Jack in Portland. China really had the gunpowder market cornered for a long time. And it was the Silk, the Silk Road, the trading route that helped it spread across Asia and into Africa and Europe, and of course eventually into America from Europe. But man, the Chinese really nailed it. They used it for fireworks and explosives, and for projectiles and for like grenade, early grenade, and when it comes to warfare. But the Chinese really, really, really had gunpowder, that entire market cornered for centuries, which is pretty
Fireworks
amazing.
as well.
Fireworks as well.
They invented a form of paper and they invented gunpowder, so put them together, fireworks. They had those.
And pasta and tomatoes too. Did you know that? Like, I swear, Italy owes their entire cuisine to
China?
To China.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, the tomatoes aren't Chinese. Tomatoes are a New World crop.
Oh, I thought they were. I thought that China was using tomatoes, some version of tomatoes. I know I read that Jefferson was the first guy to start growing tomatoes and using them, as food. That that people. I guess a lot of nightshades are poisonous. And
tomatoes and potatoes, both being related to nightshade. In fact, tomatoes and potatoes are pretty closely related to each other, but they're both from the same, I believe, the same family as nightshades. So people kind of didn't trust them a whole lot early on, but of course they're ubiquitous now.
There you go. What do you got? I heard that you are doing some pretty cool blogs somewhere else, not on our website, but another place. You have some pretty cool things happening. I wanted you to expand on that and talk about that so that people can find you in your other platform.
Well, they're not. These aren't blog posts, but long before I was writing blog posts for the SDCGO blog, and what I do mainly is I am a freelance writer, and one of my biggest contract holder is Leatherneck Magazine, and many of you in the listening audience may know that 2025 is the 250th anniversary year of the Marine Corps, and Leatherneck, being the magazine of the Marine Corps, is running a special volume for the year from last November to this November to commemorate that. And each issue of the magazine is focusing on a period of about 20 years in the history of the Marine Corps. And for each of those issues, I have a segment on the most notable standard long arm that the Marine Corps used during that period. So I cross-posted the first one of those that I did for this past November's issue. I adapted that into a blog post for the SDCGO blog. It went up, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So you can go check that, look at all the pictures that I took when I was in the vault, and complain to me about how you don't like the shot framing if you want. I don't know. I'm not a professional photographer, but more of those will be coming up throughout the year.
That's awesome. So Leatherneck, how do they find it? What, is there a website, or how do they actually find it? Where do they go to find that whole series that you're a part of?
Well, if you are a subscriber to Leatherneck Magazine, then you'll be receiving those, and you will have received past feature-length articles that I wrote in addition to these little 2-page spreads for this year. If you are not a subscriber to Leatherneck, then you can go to let me just check real quick.
Well, number one, subscribe to Leatherneck. Check it out. Even if you were never in the Marine Corps, check out Leatherneck Magazine.
You can do that by going to mca-marines.org and joining the Marine Corps Association to get your monthly issue of Leatherneck or Gazette. I don't judge, but I write for Leatherneck, so that's the better one, of course.
All right, cool. Sam the Gunman, awesome job, great trivia. Thank you for all the writing that you do. I really, truly are a gifted researcher and writer. So I encourage everybody to check it out. He does a great job for us. He does a great job for Leatherneck. So thank you so much, Sam. Awesome job, bud.
Well, thanks for having me on, as always. Hope I didn't disappoint, and thanks very much, everyone, for listening.
Awesome, dude. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, so our next segment, we're going to do something a little different. It's kind of interesting. This is our Straight Shooter segment, sponsored by straightshooter.ac, 619-922-3937. If you are in the San Diego area and you own your air conditioner and you own your heater, check these guys out. You want them to come and service your equipment before something goes wrong, or if you're in the market for a new one, they're the guys. Straight Shooter, straightshooter.ac. No bull, just straight shooting on today's hottest gun and political topics. It's time for the Straight Shooter segment. We have a very interesting guest on today, and we want to talk about TikTok, believe it or not. There's an interesting thing that's happening with TikTok, and whether or not you know about TikTok or not, or know what TikTok does,
Or if you even care.
this piece is going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. It is, and I mean interesting in the historic sense of the word. I mean, it's, whether social media is interesting to you or not, what's happening with TikTok when it comes to the debate that's going on, when it comes to the fact that there are foreign relations involved, and there's, Supreme Court's gotten involved. It's pretty interesting. I think there's a deeper issue that I want to talk about when it comes to TikTok. And the whole subject got really interesting to me a couple of couple of weeks ago, everybody started talking about how TikTok was going to get banned. They actually did get banned, but then Trump extended it when he got into office, and it really got me thinking: what exactly is going on here? Why are we banning a platform? What's the real story here? And there's kind of two pieces to it. So I asked somebody who I know and trust to come on and talk about it because he's particularly knowledgeable. Paul Benfield, the head of strategy for a ground robotics company based in Maryland. He has expertise in venture capital and emerging dual-use technology that is focused on the national security ecosystem. He has extensive experience in private and public sector client management with a sustained focus on cutting-edge software, space, telecommunications, robotics, and enterprise AI products. Before transitioning to the private sector, he served over 20 years in various roles in the U.S. Army. His final role was a military assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, focusing on innovation and modernization priorities, particularly integrating emergency technology into operational concepts. He holds an MA in policy management from Georgetown University and a BA from Campbell University. Paul, how's it going, man?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, you reading that bio, I think, took longer than it took me to create that bio.
No kidding. My gosh. Like, what percentage of your 20 years in the Army did it take just to read that bio? Awesome job, though. Thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate your expertise here. It's kind of interesting. What I want to do is, it's a big subject, so I want to kind of, go step by step. Let's describe what exactly TikTok is, or at least, in general, what is TikTok, and then I want to talk about what happened legislatively and legally, and then let's break it down into. There's really two issues going on here, and discuss kind of the ins and outs of both of them. So if you don't mind, first off, talk to us, what's TikTok? If people don't know what TikTok is, I mean, it's a social media platform, but what else do they need to know about? What is TikTok to somebody who has absolutely no concept as to what TikTok is?
So it's exactly that. I mean, you kind of have to have some idea what social media is, but it's just a platform that people can share short form videos, right? And it started literally as, like a lot of social media did, as younger kids, teenagers sharing, favorite music videos or dance routines, stuff like that. And as it morphed over the few years, it is increasingly used by, mainstream media, by state, local, federal governments, definitely corporations. There's a lot of advertising on there. But at its heart, it is a way for people to share short form video, fill in the blank content.
So how is the structure of TikTok different from Facebook, Instagram, whatever? Like, why are they targeting TikTok as something to scrutinize and then eventually ban? What makes them different?
And so I want to be clear, they're not trying to ban TikTok. Like, the US government does not want to ban TikTok. TikTok happens to be owned by a Chinese company. What the U.S. government is saying is the Chinese company should not own TikTok because two reasons. I might be jumping ahead of where you want to go here yet, but basically there's espionage fears, right? All of your data on your phone is at risk by the Chinese government getting into it. You can have your own opinion about whether it matters or not.
And that's an important distinction, though, because saying, hey, a Chinese company owns it. Well, being a Chinese company and being an American company are two different things. Being an American company, there are far more protections, there's far more autonomy, whereas being a Chinese company, you're at the mercy of the Chinese government in like every way.
Right. And the way TikTok works, let's just focus on, so there's two broad areas. There is the espionage that a foreign nation state might be able to conduct. And then there's content manipulation. That is passing certain political viewpoints or stifling other, political viewpoints. Just on the espionage part.
Actually, before we go into that, because that's perfect, espionage and PR, let's talk about that. Give me one more minute, just kind of set it up. Just to give you an idea, there's there are an estimated 170 million people on TikTok. This isn't some small
U.S. citizens.
Yeah, U.S.
170
citizens.
million U.S. citizens. That's not international.
That's like half the nation.
Yeah.
Half the nation is on TikTok. This is a very, very big deal. And before we get into the you broke it down into two different categories. And that's perfect. But before we get into that, what exactly happened? What did the U.S. government do? What did the courts do? You said that they're not trying to ban it, but what exactly did happen?
Yeah, and so the reason that Congress, and by the way, it's not just TikTok that got a lot of notice by legislators, right? There have been hearings about Facebook, hearings about Twitter, X. All the social media groups have had hearings in Congress and the Senate, which it's very funny having 80-year-old senators trying to get the details of ones and zeros and where the cat videos come from.
Right.
But way back in 2019 was the first time, and it was largely Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio, who are kind of China hawks, if you will, and also Chuck Schumer. Like, this is pretty bipartisan, who said, look, if the Chinese government by law can mandate that Chinese companies give over data, like it's in their law that it just has to be given over if they ask for it.
Right.
You could argue the same thing is true in the United States, but we have a court system in between those two actions, right? And so, yes, the government could, but they have to go prove a case and they have to go to take a court, and
there has to be like some kind of criminal,
it's got to be yes, it's got to fall
they
under.
Just say, hey, we want to spy on our own citizens, so therefore
Correct.
Give us your info.
Correct. It's not the case in China. And the other thing, which is even you talk about 170 million U.S. citizens have TikTok. They have signed up for the terms and conditions, which says you have access to all my contact info. And so if you, Michael Schwartz, do not have TikTok, but I do, and I have your name, address, phone number, email, the Chinese government now has access to Michael Schwartz's contact info and private info, even though you never signed up for TikTok, never downloaded TikTok. Right. Just because it's on my device.
And so what do they do? What's the mechanism? Like, how do you ban TikTok? Like, how did they stop? And it would only happen for a few hours. And then, like I said, the Trump administration said, wait a minute, let's push this out. I think it was 75 days. But how does the U.S. government stop someone from accessing an app like TikTok?
I mean, to be honest, it just makes it harder. Right. The U.S. government will say, hey, Apple and Verizon cannot host those apps on their platforms. Mm-hmm. And so you go get it through some, Tor, or, I'm sure if you're like a kid who's a pretty good hacker and can, get on blocked websites or get some kind of firewall thing. I'm going way
VPN tunnel or something.
You can do it, but I'm sure it'll be more difficult and it won't be not everyone can just click download from the App Store.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so now let's get into So there are two different concerns. There's a privacy concern, which actually is an espionage concern, where they actually can go into your phone or into your data, take your data, and now they know something about you, and that is, of course, against your will. That's an actual legit espionage concern.
Yeah, let's focus on that part for a second and take that. Like, if I'm look. I live in suburban Virginia and I watch football, and that's as exciting as my life gets, right? Why do I care that the Chinese are hacking? Like, who cares, right? If they have my stuff, what are they going to do with it? What they're going to do with it is map out, just like any espionage group would do in the history of time, right? They would map out key individuals. So there's people maybe I used to work with that are important, and you can target them for blackmail if they're, doing stuff on their phone. You can just push information, let's say like a military base in the Pacific, right? Let's say the Chinese, because of TikTok and other social media and other espionage attempts, can map out the leadership and chain of command at a base in Guam. And before they do some act or action, target those individuals with a specific kind of misinformation or confusion, or turn their devices off, and now the base commander doesn't have access to communications. That's all very reasonable, viable kind of next step if they have these things mapped out. And so that's the concern is, can the Chinese still figure that out? Maybe, but why would we make it easier for them and give them access to 170 million Americans plus their contact info, private information?
And that's
That's
another
the espionage part.
that's a big difference between, like, like Facebook. I've kind of joked that, I haven't seen a shampoo and conditioner commercial in years, because of the targeted advertising. I see a bunch
Yeah.
of, gun parts and Jeep parts and watches and whatever. I see a bunch of advertising of stuff that I actually want to buy, and I'm like, hey, I don't care about my privacy. Keep sending me stuff that I want to buy. I don't want to. This is very different than targeted advertising. This is a government that is, arguably hostile towards the United States. They certainly don't have our best interests in mind. So it's not like they're just trying to figure out, like, hey, what kind of stuff are we going to sell them? They're actually finding out information about, who we are, where we live, that sort of. This is legit espionage, and it's a very real concern that rises way above what Facebook or Instagram's doing. When they figure out what you're Google searching and trying to buy, if you need to buy a pair of shoes, and all of a sudden your pop-ups are all full of shoes. Very different than that.
So I think it'd be hard for anyone to argue that, and this is what the Supreme Court said in January when they basically upheld that, yes, the legislative branch has the power and the authority to ban a foreign-owned social media platform if they don't solve the privacy things. It's hard to argue that there's not espionage impacts, right? And that's what the Supreme Court said. And the legislative branch, by mandate, is supposed to look out for the security of their American citizens and take action where necessary. And so what they've been doing this for, like, I think 3 years now, negotiating with the Chinese-owned company called ByteDance, which is the actual parent company that owns TikTok, about selling it. Like, if an American company owned it, this issue goes away. So the idea that we're trying to ban TikTok is not accurate. We're trying to kick Chinese ownership out of TikTok because of how many Americans have their private information on it.
Do you have any feeling, or have you read anything on the difference between the parent company and the Chinese government? In other words, is the parent company just basically a puppet of the Chinese government, or are they a legitimate company that's just trying to make money, but they still are under the control of the Chinese government? You know what I mean? Like, are they open to the idea of saying, hey, we want to make this work, and we're not in it for the espionage, Chinese government is, and we can't, we have no control over that?
Yeah, there's really no, and this is going to be kind of a gross generalization. I'm sure there's exceptions, but for the most part, there's really no daylight between Chinese government and Chinese corporations.
Wow.
And to be clear, this is not like China writ large. This is the Communist Party of China, which runs everything, and the Communist Party of China that basically can just arrest business leaders if they don't do what they want them to do. And so there's really no daylight between the two of them.
So there's a fix on this, and there's actually, like, there's even like a technological, like, there are ways to block it. There are ways to check the coding and make sure that some of these horrible things aren't happening or whatever. There are ways to protect your privacy, even though I got to tell you, in 2025, you don't have any privacy anymore.
You don't.
It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as privacy. That is a fairy tale in this day and age. But still, there are ways to put walls between you and TikTok, technologically, there are ways to do it. I don't think anybody even argues that, if they're digging into my information, I don't care how the disclosures are written. I don't want that to happen. But as soon as it was determined that, hey, TikTok was going to go away, what happened? What did all the users do?
Well, there's a large group that went to this other Chinese platform called Red Note,
which is even worse.
Which is named after Mao's Little Red Book that started the whole communism in China thing.
So it's even worse. So the TikTok exists. TikTok, there's no daylight between the Chinese government and TikTok. The American government said, hey, we can't do this. Or we can't have this. The Supreme Court said, we agree. Everything's okay. And a big chunk of the users said, okay, fine. If you won't let us use TikTok, then we're going to go use this other app that's almost the same.
And, by the way, so the TikTok data for U.S. users lives in the U.S. Our government says they can still pass data back to the home corporation in China. That's not safe enough. Red Note, all of the user data lives in China. And so we don't have any access to go check and see what they're doing and if they're doing, the right thing. The data itself actually lives in China, which is much more dangerous. You actually have to sign up to self-censorship by signing up to Red Note. You're not allowed to talk about certain things like Tiananmen Square or the Uyghurs and China. You can't say anything bad about the President Xi. You have to agree to that before you go on Red Note. And so this goes into the other part of the argument about Chinese on TikTok is the content manipulation,
the propaganda. But before, let me just put a period on the end of the sentence there. So we're not going to solve this thing by saying, hey, you no longer have access to TikTok. They just jump ship to an even worse platform that's even worse or even better for the Chinese when it comes to espionage. And it truly, it kind of reminded me of, it honestly reminded me of like the story of like the 10 Commandments, and Moses says, hey, things are going sideways, and he goes up and he gets the commandments and he comes back down the mountain, and the Hebrews are all like, hey, don't worry about it. We got this new golden calf that we're worshiping, so problem solved. It's like, well, no, wait a minute. That's not solving the problem. And there's story after story. It definitely feels like there's a whole new thing going on when it comes to technology and when it comes to living in a world community. And, just saying, hey, you no longer can access this thing, or we're going to stop you from accessing or whatever. Not a solution. They're really, it's a 19th century and further back attempt to solve a problem that is clearly a 21st century issue. So that's the technology side, and that's one piece. Obviously, we all agree that no app from China should be going into our phones and taking all our information and using it to, against us or whatever. But then there's the other side, the propaganda side. So let's talk about the second problem. And this is where I think it gets really, really spicy and interesting here. So talk about the propaganda angle when it comes to TikTok.
And so this was what really kind of got me fired up when, people would start talking about this whole TikTok ban, of which it wasn't not supposed to be a ban. We're just an American company to own it. And people were talking about First Amendment, right? And the U.S. government censoring people. And the First Amendment doesn't apply to foreign companies. And also, if you think about like people complaining about what the previous ownership of Twitter, right? There's a lot of complaints about those people stifling certain political opinion, right? They're a private company. If I own a company and I want only right-wing Republican information, this is my personal opinion, I should be allowed to do that. If I want to start up one that's just only liberal, focused politics, I should be able to do that. The government should not be able to step in and tell me, who owns a private company, what I can allow. Where it gets a little bit squishy is that has become sort of the social agora. Like that's where people get their news and information from. And so that's, the whole 19th century policy for 21st century technology kind of thing.
And because TikTok has essentially become a news source, and it's definitely become a source of actual literal propaganda from the Communist Chinese Party.
Yeah, and Russians and Iranians and certain corporations in the United States, certain political parties on whatever spectrum, doesn't matter. But the way the algorithm is supposed to work is almost like a free market for you individually. It goes back to, you don't like getting shampoo ads. The algorithm will remember that and start showing you more Jeep ads, right? And it's a free market kind of system. What companies can do, and they have to do in some cases, is they will put their thumb on the scale of that algorithm. And so anything that's criminal, right? Like Facebook is mandated to not allow drug trafficking, child pornography, human trafficking type of stuff, right? And we would all agree that's something that they have kind of a responsibility on their platform to not allow crime to happen. Well, to do that, they have to go and alter the algorithm. It's not all that complicated. And so no matter how much you want to see something illegal, You're not going to see it. It's not going to pop up on the algorithm, even when someone tries to sneak those types of things on the platform. Take it one step further. I'm now the Chinese government, and I can tell this company how to manipulate the algorithm in a way that's helpful to me, right? You're not going to be able to talk about Tiananmen Square. You're not going to be able to talk about us doing things and, to Filipino fishing vessels. You can only talk about how great the Beijing Olympics were. And it's not hard for them to start manipulating that content. So from a policy perspective, I personally believe that that is probably more dangerous than having individual, contact lists out of people's phones.
But way harder to regulate.
Yeah. And
way
then
harder to regulate.
And the Supreme Court, when they said, hey, the U.S. government is allowed to make TikTok divest itself of Chinese ownership. It is allowed because of espionage. They said, we are not even going to talk about content manipulation. And I think it was Gorsuch, basically like, hey, one person's content manipulation is another person's editorial license, right?
Yeah.
So they said, you're allowed to do this, U.S. government, because there's a clear and like a pattern of espionage that they've done in the past that they could probably do again. We are not going to say you can stop them from manipulating content, because that is a very, very tough problem that the Supreme Court does not want to get involved in.
And let me just some real world examples. If you go on, so a lot of the videos, like if somebody does a video on TikTok, it'll appear on Instagram, it'll appear on Facebook. There are now videos out there that are fairly common of people who've already made the switch to, it's called Red Note in the other Chinese app. Okay, so they've already made this switch to Red Note, and they're putting out videos that are appearing on Instagram, appearing on Facebook, and now that TikTok's back up and running, appearing on TikTok. And these are normal, everyday U.S. citizens who are saying, hey, I'm on this new Chinese app, and I'm talking to people from China. You're not going to believe this, but they have this great house, and it's cheap. They have this great health insurance, health care that they don't even have to pay for. There's no crime in China. No one gets hurt. It's the land of milk and honey. And they're not paid, stooges. No. This is truly an example of, some 20 or 30 something who, is buying into the propaganda. They're being influenced by the propaganda. And you get enough people that are influenced by propaganda, that turns into public policy being influenced by propaganda.
Yeah. And the way the algorithm works is there could be two people who have said this to each other, but 170 million people are going to see that conversation. And if there's 1 million people saying there's something wrong with China, no one will see that conversation. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that kind of nudge it. And so there's a couple different programs that, and I think every nation state does this. So it's not specific to China, but they'll put up fake websites that look like local news websites. So you get on to, WJTC Channel 5, and it's actually a Trojan horse. It's fake. 90% of the news will be basically scraped from other news sources. So they'll just repost something from CNN or Fox News or whatever. But then they'll pepper in 10% of this. Hey, look how much police brutality is happening in the United States, and just kind of pepper in those. Those are called, I think it's paper walls or something like that. But it's a whole campaign to try to manipulate thought through people thinking they're seeing legitimate sites. And the other one is they'll just go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and they do this thing where it's basically, it's sometimes subtle and sometimes very overt, but they do this thing where it's like, hey, look at these problems in the United States, but that's capitalism for you, wah, wah. Yep. We're communists, so we don't have to deal with that, and it really, it's like the horses have left the stable, it's they pretty, it appears they already have, our information. And now, they're doing this propaganda thing. And I got to tell you, I'm as First Amendment as I am Second Amendment. And I agree with what we think Gorsuch said, that hey, look, we should be allowed. I should be allowed to listen to whatever I want to listen to. I should be allowed to hear whatever I want to hear. I'm a First Amendment guy. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I want communication. I don't want to be manipulated. But the odd part of that is all this propaganda is manipulation. But I'm an American. I'm an adult. I should be able. I got to be able to decipher the difference between that. So, I mean, is China? Maybe this is a little too far outside of the subject, but is China truly a communist country at this point? Are they, are they close enough to being a textbook communist country that we can even call them communist anymore?
I mean, there's no such thing as purely communist, other than in theory. Just like we're not purely capitalist, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got, but there's scale, and they are absolutely much closer to communist than capitalist. I mean, they're still centrally run, right? A centrally planned, centrally managed, large bureaucracy. The government is preeminent. Not even the government. The party is preeminent over everything. There's very little rule of law that is not tilted towards the party staying in power.
Do you think that is China closer to being communist than the United States is closer to being capitalist? You know what I mean? Like, have we gotten so far away from capitalism that we're not even a real good example of the benefits of capitalism anymore? Like, it seems like some of the things that China is criticizing the United States for is like, well, you're criticizing us for problems that weren't created by capitalism. You're criticizing us for problems that were created by government control. And oh, by the way, you're saying that the solution to that is this totalitarian communism that China it lives under, which is even more government control. Am I oversimplifying that? Is that pie in the sky, or what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think you're probably right. Let's look at the actual definition of capitalism, right? There's this theory that, and this goes back to Adam Smith, right? Wealth of Nations. But there's this theory that if a manager gets profit, they will reinvest it back into production. Basically, I hire an assistant and I'm making shoes. We make a lot more money. I hire another assistant and we make more shoes, and I hire another assistant. The pie that everyone shares in the economy grows with capitalism, and it is all based on you reinvest profits into production. That is why we have billion or $1 trillion companies soon that are venture backed, VC Silicon Valley companies. And Europe doesn't have it. China's got a few of them. But we absolutely crush everybody in technology because our profits go back into, Elon Musk is a gazillionaire and he buys another company. Where communism goes is they distribute the profit completely, in theory, on paper, equitably to everyone. There's no reinvestment back into production. Or if it is, it's done by central bureaucrats who are probably removed from the problem and the solution. And that's where you get the inefficiencies of communism, why it never really works. And it also never gets distributed fairly, right? There's always people that are in power that kind of take the first cut. And we are much closer to reinvesting profits into production, i.e. capitalism, than China is to communism, or, because they have some free market stuff they're trying to do. And, but in the end, it really is everything they do, to include increasing their economy, is to keep the party in power.
So what do you think, in your opinion, what is this? So you have the two concerns. You have the espionage concern, which is really kind of a technological thing. You have the propaganda concern, which is, kind of floating out in the ether. I mean, is it a free speech thing? Is it not a free speech thing? But you have two very distinct problems. It's 2025. What do you think this? Is there a solution to those problems, or what are the solutions to those problems, or do we just need to evolve, or what are your thoughts? What do you think we should do from here?
I don't know the solution. I think the answer is we have to evolve. I mean, there's some pockets, like individually, what someone can do is try to short circuit the algorithm, right? And I don't know, how political certain family members you have might be, but I think we've all got that one who is just a hardcore fill in the blank, left, right, MAGA, Hillary supporter, doesn't matter. Um, but they all get the same news, right? They all hear the same stories, and they don't get any of the other side. That's because the algorithm knows that you watched one for 10 seconds and another for 0, and you just swipe past it. So it just starts feeding you more of the stuff that you like. It was developed to sell ad space and to have eyeballs on a website longer. And so, I mean, it's literally like a game theory thing where they just increase dopamine. And the longer you're looking at something, the more they can monetize that. So they're not going to risk turning you off from looking at your phone by showing you something uncomfortable or showing you something you disagree with. The only way you have to, one, go against that, start following things that you absolutely disagree with. I mean, it gives you a chance to like troll and post on the comments, right? But you've got to short circuit the algorithm at the individual level. And then the other thing is there's schools now that are starting to teach kids what fake news websites look like, right? Like what fake URLs look like. And it started with, hey, you're doing research online. How do you vet and validate your source? How do you know that this is a real article or a real news story or something that's really happening? And so it's like social media literacy, which I think, people our age are probably too late to save, but the next generation, they're probably more, digital natives, and they can probably get a little bit more sophisticated quicker than we did. That's very optimistic. Like, I don't know that that's going to work, but
it definitely feels like there just isn't a legislative solution. It doesn't feel like.
I don't think there is, but and I don't know that this TikTok, forcing TikTok to sell is going to change it. I just know that we should make it easier for China to, steal our info or fill our airways full of propaganda. Like the idea that the Soviet Union could own NBC in the 50s, like that's asinine, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. But no one has a problem with the Chinese Communist Party owning probably over 170 million people get news and information from.
Is there any indicator, have you read anything or seen anything? Was this a matter of a company in China having an idea and the Chinese government exploiting it, or was this done by design from the ground up?
No, it was just exploitation. I mean, I'm sure they do the same. The Russians do the same thing on Facebook bot farms. They just put up server farms and put out fake stuff. The Iranians do it. The Indians do it against the Bangladeshis and the Pakistan. I mean, everyone's doing it. It's just another tool in the kind of information campaign that governments use. I don't think TikTok was created as a espionage tool from the ground up. It was just a targeted opportunity. And foreign governments certainly use our social media platforms to do the same thing. Yeah. It's just a little bit more difficult because we can control the data and have access to the algorithm stuff.
And it's such a fine line between perspective and propaganda, or opinion and propaganda. I mean, I got to tell you, I think that everything that our organization produces, everything that we say on here, is valid and true and upstanding and with the best of intentions. But I would also imagine that if you're someone, there's probably somebody in the Brady organization that listens to us every week just because they like getting mad, and we're a bunch of liars and we whatever, even though I'm sitting here going, hey, I got to tell you, I'm putting out the best information I could possibly think of. I'm trying to, be pure of thought and try to give both sides, whatever, I'm trying my very hardest to do that. There's such a weird fine line. It's such a gray area between propaganda and opinion. And, but use of that information, like if when it becomes espionage, it gets real clear though.
Yeah. And again, the espionage part of this argument, I think, is pretty cut and dry. You either agree or you don't. You either care or you don't that they can target individual people or individual groups of people. The content manipulation is much more squishy. I think individuals can have whatever opinion you want, but governments shouldn't be able to lie, right? And so the Chinese government just saying Tiananmen Square didn't happen, or, finding some story and then all of a sudden making it seem like 100 million people agree that this policy in the U.S. is bad. That shouldn't be allowed, right? And they've done it for like purely. It's not just political. They've done it purely for economic reasons. Like they started a protest movement against an Australian rare earth metal company that wanted to open up in Texas, and it basically they threw a whole bunch of like environmental protection issues, started flagging it so it showed up on the top of everyone's feed. So a bunch of people thought it was a big deal. And really, it was just a Chinese company that did not want competition in the U.S.
Wow. So, all right, very interesting. I really want people to walk away knowing that this whole TikTok issue is bigger than just a bunch of 30-second dances and challenges or whatever on some social media.
It's not cat
platform.
videos that we're arguing about.
Yeah, this is a big issue. It's got broader implications. Anything else? We wrap it up here, but Paul, is there anything other? What else do you want people to know or understand or think about when it comes to this issue? Anything else?
Just this has nothing to do with the First Amendment. If a U.S. company owned TikTok, it would not even be an issue. The Supreme Court said this is not about the First Amendment. It's not trying to stifle American citizens from having opinions or having a platform to say it. So if they're smart, someone like Oracle will buy them and this whole thing goes away.
How close do you think they're close to that? Is that going to happen? I'm reading things.
I don't know. They've been trying to do it for 3 years. And in the end, the Chinese don't want to sell. Like Chinese government said, we're not selling it because they know it's a pretty useful tool.
Yeah. I got to tell you, in these videos, I haven't seen every single video by all 170 million people or whatever. Trump's getting zero credit from the TikTok community, by the way. Not one bit of nobody's going, hey, you know what? I didn't vote for him, but gosh, you just saved my career. By the way, that's the other piece of this is these TikTok creators. This isn't just a hobby. Like these people these are careers. These are people that are making six figures off of doing these silly, challenges and videos or whatever. And not one of them has bothered to say, hey, you know what? Gee, golly gosh, this guy got into office and he saved TikTok and I still have.
Well, here's the thing. Here's my question. How do you know?
How do they know? Or how
do you know that they're not giving Trump credit? This could be the algorithm not showing Michael Schwartz those videos so that he doesn't let any, keep the divide, keep the liberals and Mike Schwartz from fighting each other. That's how sophisticated it
wrapped up in an enigma. Or whatever. Yeah. All right, cool. Paul, thank you so much. That was awesome. That was really, really interesting. Like I said,
know it's like a little bit kind of off your normal topic, but
well, it's politics. It's politics.
First and Second Amendment, they're closely related.
They are, and I got to tell you, if there's anybody that suffers, obviously, gun owners suffer from, folks that are against the Second Amendment, and we have to take that abuse, but we're just as abused on the First Amendment. I mean, I regularly see people that are kicked off social media. We have to follow all kinds of weird rules and regulations when it comes, just because we're Second Amendment, just because we're gun owners. So, I mean, this type of regulation on social media is absolutely relevant to gun owners. So thank you so much for letting the audience know about it. I thought it was a very interesting discussion. Paul Benfield, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, there you go. That was the show. I got to tell you, Paul's a super interesting guy too. He's a very, very intelligent guy. He's probably he really is truly one of the smartest people I've ever met. He barely touched on his 20-year career, but that's a guy who enlisted as an E1 into the Army, and 20 years later had a degree and a postgraduate degree and retired as an 04 major. He served in Afghanistan. He served in Iraq, and has just an extremely impressive military career. A military career that I absolutely discouraged him from having and said he was great. What are you doing? You're joining the Army. What are you doing? And I was completely and totally wrong. We still laugh about that. But anyway, very intelligent guy, very impressive information from him. I thought you guys would find that interesting. I'm just not seeing a real good conversation about the broader context and the real problems, especially that propaganda part. Like you said, the espionage part, clear cut. Don't spy on me. I have privacy, whatever. But the influence part, the propaganda part, nobody's really talking about that. Nobody's really talking about that. And it really appears to be the driver when it comes to what the U.S. government was trying to do. And they really kind of had to use the espionage part in order to get done what they needed to get done because of the propaganda part. But super interesting. We'll see what happens. I don't think we're going to see any kind of really true solution. I mean, this is something that's going to develop over your lifetime. I think that we're all going to be, on our deathbeds, and this issue will still be developing, and it's enormously interesting. This just wasn't a thing back in the 70s or the 80s or the early part of the 1900s. It just wasn't a thing. We didn't know what was going on in China or Africa or Japan or the Congo or whatever. We just didn't know what was going on. I mean, somebody would have to write a book. We'd have to read the book. Now you're getting real-time information from people on the streets in these different countries, on these different continents. It's phenomenally different, and I think it's a progression of human beings. And it's super interesting. So there you go. What'd you think of that, Alicia? How do we do?
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, right?
A lot of good information.
All right, guys. We will see you next week. Thank you, Alicia. Awesome job. Thank you, Sam. You did a great job. Anna Cannon. I love that name. That's like the best name.
That's it.
Paul Benfield. Thank you. Sam Lichman, Sam the Gunman, my nephew, and of course, Rich on the mixing board over there. Don't forget to go to gunownersradio.com. Follow us. Like us on social media, TikTok about us, and tell everybody to start listening to us, following us. See you guys next week.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.